There's a comfortable lie that almost everyone accepts without realizing it, that some people are born to understand the world and others only to follow it. From an early age, you've been taught that genius is rare, genetic, almost mystical, something reserved for a select few. But Machiavelli already knew that this belief was never about truth, but about control. When you believe you can't evolve mentally, you become predictable. And predictability is the greatest gift anyone can give to the system. The reality is far less romantic and much more powerful. Genius is not a gift. It's a method, a set of specific mental techniques that have been gradually removed from formal education because they create people who are difficult to manipulate, difficult to govern, and impossible to lead without resistance. It's no coincidence that almost no one learns to think strategically, question narratives, master their own mind, and see beyond appearances. This was never a mistake. It was a design choice. And here's the uncomfortable part. Anyone can use this method, including you. It doesn't require a high IQ, money, or secret contacts. It requires something far rarer, the courage to abandon illusions, face reality unfiltered, and take full responsibility for one's own mind. Throughout this content, you will realize that what is called superior intelligence is, in fact, a deliberate construction, a path that few tread because it shatters beliefs, deconstructs identities, and exposes truths that are not pleasant, but liberating. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now, not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. For a long time, it was repeated like a comfortable mantra that intelligence is something you're born with, something decided at birth, almost like an invisible stamp on each person's forehead. The experienced mentor knows that this narrative was never innocent. It perfectly serves a politics guided by reality, not by ideals, where a few lead and many obey without questioning. By believing that they weren't born for this, the individual abdicates their own virtue and surrenders their fortune to chance. Machiavelli would never buy into this story. He understood that power begins when someone realizes that the world doesn't reward intentions, but decisions based on real human nature. Genius, in this scenario, ceases to be a gift and becomes a construct. The myth of genetic genius functions as an appearance of virtue for the system. It seems fair, it seems scientific, but it keeps everything exactly as it is. When someone accepts this lie, they also accept being predictable, and predictability is the perfect fuel for those who desire control. It's not about rare talent, it's about invisible training. The end justifies the means, and here the means has always been to make you give up before you even try. Fixed intelligence is a nice story, but nice stories rarely liberate. They reassure, accommodate, and silence. And silence, when imposed, is never neutral. The attentive thinker begins to notice a curious pattern. People considered brilliant rarely started out brilliant. They started out curious, persistent, and often uncomfortable. Intelligence is shaped like a strategic muscle, strengthened by the calculated use of the right mental force at the right time. It is no coincidence that historical geniuses have always built their own armies. their own loyal armies of ideas, methods, and habits. Instead of accepting labels, they tested limits. A simple example: someone who learns to solve complex problems wasn't born solving them. They started by making big mistakes, adjusting course, practicing constant adaptability. This applies to business, studies, reading people, and even emotional decisions. Reading a difficult book, rereading a confusing chapter, explaining a concept aloud, all of this reprograms the brain. There's nothing mystical about it. There is method. There is strategic repetition. There is intention. While many wait for motivation, those who advance create systems, and systems, as Machiavelli knew, survive longer than impulses. Genius emerges when someone decides to stop treating themselves as a finished product. This is the point at which the mind begins to escape external control. And this escape is unsettling. When this truth begins to fall into place, something changes inside. The person realizes they were never less capable, only poorly trained. This dismantles years of silent conditioning. The mentor observes that this discovery usually causes a mixture of relief and anger. Relief at understanding that it's possible to evolve, anger at realizing the time wasted believing otherwise. But even this has strategic value. Better to be feared than loved, said Machiavelli, and here the fear is not of others, but of one's own limitations being exposed. By accepting that intelligence is built, the individual assumes total responsibility for themselves. And responsibility is more frightening than ignorance. The mind begins to seek patterns, connections, real shortcuts. It is no longer content with ready-made answers. This is the beginning of something bigger. A silent rupture with everything that was taught without questioning. The person doesn't yet know exactly what will come next, but feels that there are hidden layers in reality. Layers that never appear to those who only repeat. And it is precisely at this point of discomfort that the next inevitable question arises. Who, after all, benefits when no one learns to think for themselves? When one observes the educational system with a colder, almost surgical eye, something becomes apparent. It was never designed to create free thinkers, but to form functional and predictable people. The experienced mentor knows that this is not conspiracy theory, but politics guided by reality, not by ideals. From an early age, one is taught what to think, rarely how to think. Questioning becomes synonymous with rebellion, while obedience earns medals. Machiavelli would understand this as an elegant social engineering, sustained by the appearance of virtue. The discourse is beautiful, education for all, but the method prioritizes repetition, not deep understanding. The student who memorizes is rewarded. The one who questions is corrected. Thus, loyal armies are created not of armed soldiers, but of conditioned minds. The end justifies the means when the objective is stability and control. Over the years, natural curiosity is domesticated. The child who asks too many questions is difficult. The adult who accepts everything is mature. None of this is accidental. It is structure. Memorization, when isolated, acts as an invisible brake on strategic thinking. It occupies mental space without generating real power. The mentor often explains this with a simple example. Memorizing formulas doesn't teach someone to solve new problems, only to repeat old solutions. This applies to mathematics, history, politics, and even emotional life. Decisions based on real human nature require understanding, not repetition. A student may know dates, names, and definitions, but still be unable to see patterns, intentions, and consequences. This is why so many educated people remain manipulable. The system rewards those who don't threaten the structure. Thinking differently requires constant adaptability, something that doesn't fit into standardized tests. When someone learns only to answer predictable questions, they become incapable of creating new ones, and those who don't create questions live within someone else's answers. Machiavelli would warn, "Whoever controls the learning method controls the battlefield. The real danger has never been ignorance, but the false sense of knowing." The most curious thing is that many defend this model without realizing they were shaped by it. It's the ultimate proof of the efficiency of control, making the dominated protect their own cage. The mentor observes that breaking free from this doesn't require abandoning studies, but changing the way of studying, reading to understand intentions, not just content. When studying history, for example, asking who benefited from this instead of just what happened. When learning something new, explaining it in your own words, as if you were teaching a friend. Small actions, big effects. This internal movement begins to weaken the dependence on external authorities. The person begins to trust their own reasoning more. And this is dangerous for any system that depends on automatic obedience. Better to be feared than loved. Here means respecting one's own thinking, even when it bothers you. This shift doesn't happen all at once. It begins as a silent discomfort, a feeling that something doesn't add up. And when this feeling grows, the next perception naturally arises. If school shapes, then the brain can also be reshaped, and this idea changes everything. When someone understands that the brain is not a rigid structure, but a living system in constant adaptation, a silent key turns within. The mentor often says that treating the mind as something fixed is like buying a supercomputer and only using it to add simple numbers. Neuroplasticity proves, in practice, that the brain reorganizes itself according to use, focus, and environment. None of this is abstract. It's politics guided by reality, not by ideals. What is repeated strengthens. What is ignored weakens. Thus, mental habits build invisible pathways that shape decisions, reactions, and even self-perception. Machiavelli would understand this as pure strategic advantage. Whoever controls their own internal software doesn't react to the world, they act upon it. The problem is that most people operate with programs installed in childhood, full of fears, limiting beliefs, and external permissions. These old codes work well for control, not for sovereignty. The end justifies the means when the means is to reprogram oneself, and few bother with that effort. Breaking the childhood software doesn't mean denying the past, but updating its commands. The mentor often suggests something simple and uncomfortable, observing automatic patterns. How does the person react to criticism? Do they avoid challenges? Do they seek approval before acting? Each repeated reaction reveals an active line of mental code. From there, the calculated use of inner strength begins, replacing automatic responses with conscious ones. A practical example: when the impulse to give up quickly arises, pause for 10 seconds and ask, is this an old fear or a real risk? This question, repeated, creates new neural connections. Reading books that require prolonged attention, such as strategic biographies or works of practical philosophy, also forces the brain to move out of superficial mode. It's not about quantity, but depth. Your own loyal armies here are mental habits trained to protect focus and clarity. Constant adaptability arises when the brain learns that it can change without asking permission, and that scares those who depend on predictable minds. Over time, a person notices something curious. What once seemed too difficult begins to become merely unknown. This subtle change redefines everything. Intelligence ceases to be a label and becomes a tool under construction. Better to be feared than loved in this context means not negotiating with old limits just to feel comfortable. The trained mind begins to anticipate scenarios, see consequences, and read intentions with greater precision. Decisions based on real human nature replace emotional impulses. The appearance of virtue, pretending that everything is fine not to evolve, lose its power. A silent desire to go further emerges, not for status but for autonomy. This internal movement creates a productive restlessness. If the brain can be reprogrammed, then the first step is not to learn more content, but to learn to question the commands that are already running. And this question opens the way to something even more powerful, the ability to question absolutely everything. At some point in life, almost everyone learns, without realizing it, that questioning too much is hard work, creates friction, and delays ready-made answers. The experienced mentor sees this as one of the greatest tricks ever normalized. Questioning everything is not childish rebellion. It's politics guided by reality, not by naive ideals. Machiavelli understood that those who accept ready-made narratives live within someone else's strategy. Radical critical thinking begins when a person starts to distrust the obvious, including what has always worked. Phrases like, "It's always been this way," or "Everyone does it this way," are silent warnings. They signal areas where thought has died. Questioning doesn't mean denying everything, but investigating hidden intentions, structures, and interests. The end justifies the means when the means is to see beyond the surface. Those who don't question, react. Those who question, choose. And choosing is the first real act of mental power. The mentor often teaches a simple yet uncomfortable technique. When faced with any compelling information, ask 3 silent questions. Who benefits from this? Who loses from this? And what is not being said? This habit changes everything. News, advice, social rules, and even family opinions begin to reveal invisible layers. This is strategic reading of reality. Decisions based on real human nature emerge when one understands that almost every narrative carries self-interest. Questioning discourses is not cynicism, it's mental hygiene. A practical example, when receiving professional advice, instead of immediately accepting or rejecting it, observe whether the person giving the advice experiences the consequences of what they say. If they don't, the advice is theoretical. At this stage, one's own loyal armies act as mental filters that protect against emotional manipulation. Constant adaptability is born when a person realizes that no truth is eternal, only functional in a given context. This doesn't generate insecurity, it generates strategic flexibility. Over time, questioning everything ceases to be an effort and becomes a trained instinct. The mind begins to see structures behind behaviors, patterns behind decisions, and games behind moral discourses. The appearance of virtue loses its hypnotic power. Better to be feared than loved here means not fearing appearing difficult or complicated by overthinking. The advanced questioner doesn't fight, doesn't confront unnecessarily. They observe. The calculated use of force appears in silence, in the pause before reacting, in the choice of when to speak and when only to register. This skill creates a strange sensation. Reality seems less chaotic and more predictable. Not because it has become simple, but because the mechanisms have become visible. And when the mechanisms are revealed, a new curiosity naturally arises. If questioning changes the way of thinking, is there an even more powerful way of thinking? One that doesn't depend only on words, but on images and internal simulations. At a certain level of mental maturity, the thinker realizes that words are useful but limited tools. They describe, they don't simulate. The experienced mentor explains that the most trained brains operate on images, scenarios, and internal movements, not on linear sentences. Thinking visually is politics guided by reality, not by abstract ideals. Machiavelli knew that whoever anticipates scenarios governs the game before it begins. Hypervisualization allows this, seeing consequences before acting, testing decisions without paying the real price. While most discuss what to do, few see what will happen. It's not unbridled imagination, it's mental strategy. The end justifies the means when the means is to reduce error and increase precision. Dimensional thinking transforms ideas into maps, and maps always beat speeches. Those who rely only on words react late. Those who visualize act early. Historical geniuses used this ability almost invisibly. Nikola Tesla designed complete machines in his mind before building any part. Einstein imagined himself traveling on beams of light. Da Vinci drew what did not yet exist. None of them operated solely with verbal language. The mentor emphasizes that this was not a mystical gift, but deliberate training. A simple exercise. Before making an important decision, close your eyes and simulate 3 scenarios: the best, the worst, and the most likely. Visualize details, human reactions, obstacles, and emotional consequences. This practice activates deep areas of the brain and creates new neural connections. Your own loyal armies here are well-trained mental images that replace impulses. The calculated use of force appears when the person has already lived the mistake mentally and decides not to commit it in reality. Constant adaptability emerges when scenarios change rapidly, but the mind is already prepared. Over time, thinking in images becomes automatic. Conversations, negotiations, and conflicts are perceived as moving scenes, not as personal attacks. This strengthens inner sovereignty. Better to be feared than loved at this stage means not being swept away by the emotion of the moment. The person sees the emotion arise but is not confused by it. Decisions based on real human nature become clearer because behaviors become predictable within a visual scenario. The appearance of virtue, beautiful words without action, loses impact in the eyes of those who see beyond. This way of thinking creates inner silence and external precision. And it is precisely this silence that awakens the next need. If visualization already expands the mind, what happens when it is forced to answer questions that seem impossible? There comes a point where learning more information no longer produces real growth. The experienced mentor knows that true expansion begins when the mind is placed in situations it doesn't yet know how to resolve. Impossible questions aren't for obtaining immediate answers, but for breaking internal limits. This is a principle deeply aligned with politics guided by reality, not by comfortable ideals. Machiavelli understood that power arises when someone forces thought beyond known territory. Questions like, what if everything I believe is partially wrong? Or how would I act if I weren't afraid of losing approval? Create productive short circuits. The end justifies the means when the means is to provoke growth. The mind, strategically pressured, begins to seek new paths. Not out of will, but out of necessity. And necessity is one of the greatest forces of human evolution. Those who never ask the impossible remain trapped in the possibilities of others. The mentor often explains that difficult questions act like mental dumbbells. At first they seem too heavy, almost useless, but with repetition they strengthen invisible structures. A practical exercise. Choose an area of life, career, money, or relationships, and formulate a question that doesn't have an obvious answer. Something like, if I had to start over from scratch in 5 years, what would I do differently today? This question forces the brain to create new neural connections. Decisions based on real human nature begin to emerge when the person perceives patterns they previously ignored. Your own loyal armies here are well-chosen questions that protect against stagnation. The calculated use of force lies in not seeking comfort, but clarity. Constant adaptability is born when the mind learns to operate without ready-made answers. It's not about arriving quickly, it's about going deeper. Over time, a person realizes that impossible questions change the way they see everything. Conversations become richer, decisions more conscious, and mistakes more educational. Intelligence ceases to be reactive and becomes investigative. Better to be feared than loved at this stage means not running away from questions that dismantle one's own image. The appearance of virtue, feigning certainty where there is only fear, begins to crumble. The advanced thinker understands that growth hurts, but stagnation anesthetizes. Difficult questions create internal tension, and well-managed tension generates power. This practice reveals something even deeper. When two opposing ideas clash within the mind, it is not a sign of confusion, but of emerging maturity. And it is precisely there that contradiction ceases to be an enemy and becomes a tool. Most people learn early on that changing their mind is a sign of weakness, when in reality, it is one of the greatest signs of intelligence in action. The experienced mentor sees contradiction as an advanced mental training ground. Holding two opposing ideas at the same time requires cognitive and political maturity guided by reality, not by rigid ideals. Machiavelli knew that those who cling too tightly to a single view become predictable, and predictability is vulnerability. The growing mind doesn't choose sides quickly, it observes tensions. The end justifies the means when the means is to dismantle fragile certainties. Contradiction doesn't confuse, it expands. When someone allows themselves to think this could be true, and at the same time the opposite could also be true, they open space for more powerful syntheses. It is in this space that more strategic decisions emerge. Avoiding contradiction maintains comfort. Confronting it builds depth. The mentor often proposes a simple and uncomfortable exercise, defending for a few minutes an idea contrary to one's own convictions, not to change sides, but to understand the complete picture. This training creates cognitive flexibility and strengthens decisions based on real human nature. A practical example: someone who believes that hard work is everything can explore without judgment the opposite idea. Working strategically matters more. The clash between the two views reveals invisible nuances. Self-contained and loyal armies, at this stage, are mental models capable of dialoguing with each other, not destroying each other. The calculated use of force appears when the person chooses when to maintain a firm position and when to adapt it to the context. Constant adaptability is not indecision. It is a precise reading of the terrain. Contradiction, when used well, does not paralyze, it guides. Over time, the mind learns that rigidity is the enemy of power. Rigid people break, flexible people adapt. Better to be feared than loved here means not fearing appearing inconsistent in the eyes of those with shallow minds. The appearance of virtue, maintaining a consistent image at all costs, loses value in the face of real inner coherence. The advanced thinker understands that truth is not static. It reorganizes itself as the context changes. This ability creates a strange sense of silent freedom. It is no longer necessary to defend opinions as an identity. They become tools, not banners. And when ideas cease to be identities, mental space is left for something even more precious: deep focus. Because a mind fragmented by constant stimuli cannot sustain productive contradictions for long. And that is precisely where the next challenge arises. Few people realize that they are not tired from overthinking, but from fragmented thinking. The experienced mentor observes that mental fragmentation is one of the most efficient weapons of control ever normalized. Notifications, rapid stimuli, constant changes of focus. All this seems harmless, but it dissolves the capacity for depth. It's politics guided by reality, not by ideals. A scattered mind is easier to control. Machiavelli would understand this as weakening the enemy without direct confrontation. When attention is broken into pieces, strategic reasoning is never completed. Ideas are born, but they don't mature. Decisions are made, but without a long-term vision. The end justifies the means when the means is to capture attention. Whoever controls the focus controls the direction, and a mind that does not sustain deep attention does not build real power. It only reacts to the next stimulus. The mentor often says that concentration is the new luxury, and luxury historically has always been a privilege of the few. Consolidating attention is an act of silent rebellion. A simple yet transformative exercise, choosing a single intellectual task for 30 minutes without any interruption. No cell phone, no open tabs, no music with lyrics. At first, the mind resists, restless, almost anxious. This reveals the level of conditioning. With repetition, new neural connections are strengthened. Your own loyal armies here are blocks of focus protected against external invasions. The calculated use of force appears when saying no to distractions that seem small but corrode thought. Decisions based on real human nature become clearer when the mind is not jumping from stimulus to stimulus. Constant adaptability is not born from haste, but from total presence. Over time, something curious happens. The person begins to find pleasure in deep thinking. External noise loses its charm. The appearance of virtue, always being busy, always connected, begins to sound empty. Better to be feared than loved, at this stage, means protecting one's own focus even when others don't understand. A consolidated mind can sustain complex ideas, contradictions, and visualizations for longer. This changes conversations, decisions, and even body posture. The individual becomes less reactive and more observant. Fragmentation weakens, focus builds sovereignty. And when focus stabilizes, a new, inevitable realization emerges. Information by itself is not enough. True power lies in knowing how to use knowledge as a strategic tool, not as an intellectual ornament. There is a silent, yet decisive difference between those who accumulate knowledge and those who transform it into practical advantage. The experienced mentor often says that information without application is merely intellectual decoration. Beautiful, but useless. Machiavelli would never respect a mind full of theories incapable of strategic action. For him, knowledge only has value when it serves decisions based on real human nature. Reading, studying, and learning are not ends, they are means. The end justifies the means when the means is to increase the power of choice. The problem is that many learn to appear intelligent, not to become effective. This pursuit of the appearance of intellectual virtue creates people full of opinions and empty of results. True knowledge changes behavior. If it doesn't change it, it hasn't been assimilated. It has only been stored. And everything that is merely stored can be used against those who believe they know. The mentor teaches a simple rule. All knowledge must answer a practical question. How does this help me read people? How does this improve my decisions? How does this protect me from predictable mistakes? Reading about psychology, for example, isn't about citing difficult terms, but about anticipating human reactions. Reading about history isn't about memorizing dates, but about understanding recurring power patterns. Personal and loyal armies here are mental models derived from what is learned, ready for use in real-life situations. A practical exercise. After reading any content, write 3 direct applications to your own life. If you can't, the learning was superficial. The calculated use of force lies in applying little, but with precision. Constant adaptability arises when knowledge becomes a tool, not an identity. Those who know how to use what they learn rarely need to prove they know. Over time, a person begins to filter information more rigorously. Not everything deserves attention. Not all knowledge deserves mental space. Better to be feared than loved at this stage means not being easily impressed by sophisticated speeches. The trained mind seeks utility, not brilliance. Decisions based on real human nature replace idealized theories. The individual begins to see conversations as information games, not as innocent exchanges. This doesn't generate paranoia, it generates lucidity. The appearance of intellectual virtue loses value in the face of silent effectiveness. And the more knowledge becomes a strategic weapon, the clearer and inevitable truth becomes. Whoever masters their own mind becomes less and less vulnerable to external control. And it is precisely from this immunity that the next level is born: mental sovereignty. Mental sovereignty is not isolation, nor emotional coldness. It is internal autonomy. The experienced mentor defines it as the ability to think, feel, and decide without being hijacked by external pressures. In strategic terms, it is politics guided by reality, not by romantic ideals of freedom. Machiavelli knew that whoever controls the emotions of others governs without needing visible force. Therefore, the sovereign mind learns to identify attempts at manipulation before they become reaction. Guilt, fear, artificial urgency, and approval are old tools. The end justifies the means when the means is to maintain one's own clarity intact. The sovereign person does not react immediately. They observe. This pause creates an advantage. One's own loyal armies here are solid internal criteria that do not change according to the mood of the environment. Without mental sovereignty, any strong opinion becomes a disguised order. The mentor often teaches that manipulation only works where there is an emotional opening. When someone is excessively dependent on validation, they become predictable. A practical exercise is simple but uncomfortable. Before accepting a request or opinion, ask yourself internally, if I gained nothing from this, would I still agree? This question quickly cuts through illusions. Decisions based on real human nature arise when a person recognizes their own triggers. The calculated use of force appears when saying less, promising less, and observing more. Constant adaptability doesn't mean yielding, but adjusting without losing focus. Mental sovereignty transforms conflicts into data, not dramas. The mind ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a command center. And when that happens, external influences lose power without you even realizing it. Over time, the sovereign person becomes difficult to label. They don't react as expected, aren't easily offended, and don't over-explain themselves. Better to be feared than loved here means not being emotionally predictable. The appearance of virtue, pleasing everyone, always seeming correct, lose value in the face of silent integrity. The individual feels less need to convince. Their presence communicates more than words. This immunity to manipulation creates a curious side effect: selective loneliness. Not everyone keeps up with someone who thinks for themselves. And it is at this point that a profound and uncomfortable realization arises. Seeing reality with total clarity requires crossing an inner abyss where few dare to look. There comes a point when the trained mind begins to see the world without the comforting filters that previously protected it from discomfort. The experienced mentor calls this crossing the abyss of clarity. It's not a comfortable place, but it's real. Here, politics guided by reality, not ideals, ceases to be a concept and becomes a daily experience. Machiavelli knew that seeing too much comes at a price. Those who see through the games can no longer pretend they don't exist. Social narratives, moral discourses, and empty promises begin to sound predictable. The end justifies the means when the means are the naked truth, even if it hurts. Clarity dismantles old illusions, including those about close people, respected institutions, and even oneself. There are no caricatured villains, only conflicting human interests. This vision doesn't make someone cold, it makes them lucid, and lucidity changes everything. The mentor warns that this stage often brings an unexpected feeling of loneliness. Not because the person withdraws from others, but because they begin to see what many prefer not to see. Conversations become superficial, enthusiasm seems exaggerated, indignation sounds performative. Decisions based on real human nature replace comforting collective beliefs. Here, one's own loyal armies are few and far between. True bonds built on honesty, not convenience. The calculated use of force appears in choosing when to speak and when to remain silent. Not all truth needs to be told. Some only need to be understood. Constant adaptability helps navigate environments where most still operate on impulse. Clarity doesn't isolate through arrogance, but through differences in perception, and this requires emotional maturity. Over time, one realizes that this abyss is not a punishment, but a portal. The appearance of virtue, pretending to believe in order to belong, completely loses its meaning. Better to be feared than loved. At this point means respecting one's own vision, even when it contradicts consensus. A clear mind does not seek approval, it seeks coherence. Reality, seen without filters, ceases to frighten and begins to guide. Apparent chaos reveals patterns. Crises show direction. This stage demands inner firmness because there is nowhere left to hide emotionally. But precisely for this reason, it prepares something greater. When clarity stabilizes, the mind ceases to oscillate. A rare, silent, and powerful state emerges, the mind that does not break under pressure. An unbreakable mind isn't born ready-made. It's built after traversing all the previous stages without turning back. The experienced mentor explains that this state isn't the absence of fear, but mastery over it. Here, politics guided by reality, not ideals, becomes natural, almost instinctive. Machiavelli would understand this point as the pinnacle of virtue operating in harmony with fortuna. The person no longer reacts to the world as before, they respond with intention. External pressure, criticism, or chaos don't cause internal collapse. The end justifies the means when the means were the construction of absolute self-control. Emotions are felt, but they don't command. Thoughts arise, but they are chosen. The mind ceases to be a hostage of circumstances. There's no need to prove anything to anyone. Control is now internal, and this completely changes one's attitude towards life. The mentor observes that at this stage, decisions become simpler, not because life has become easy, but because the inner turmoil has disappeared. Decisions based on real human nature replace illusory expectations. The person understands limits, risks, and games without becoming emotionally involved in them. One's own loyal armies, here, are solid internal values, principles tested by experience, not by rhetoric. The calculated use of force appears in the precise choice of when to act and when to wait. Better to be feared than loved means not depending on external acceptance to remain steadfast. Constant adaptability manifests as calmness in the face of change. Nothing is too surprising, nothing completely destabilizes. The unbreakable mind is not rigid, it is stable, and stability is a silent form of power. Over time, this state generates something rare, imperturbability. The appearance of virtue ceases to have any value because there is no longer a need for social performance. The person does not seek to convince, but simply lives according to what they understand to be true. External pressure becomes noise. Crises become data. The unbreakable mind does not panic, nor does it easily become euphoric. It operates, and precisely for this reason, it goes unnoticed by many. This is the final paradox. True mental power is silent. Those who achieve it do not announce it. do not teach it openly, do not oversimplify. They simply walk with clarity. And when someone gets this far, they understand that none of this was accidental. It was method. It was choice. It was deliberate construction. And this understanding forever changes the way they see the world. Now, the question that really matters isn't whether all of this makes sense. It's what you're going to do with this knowledge. Because understanding how the mind works, how control happens, and how genius is built changes nothing if you continue living on autopilot. How many decisions do you still make out of fear? How many ideas do you abandon before even testing them? How many times do you accept pre-packaged narratives just to avoid the discomfort of thinking for yourself? The truth is simple and harsh. No one will reclaim your mental sovereignty for you. Either you deliberately build your mind, or someone else will do it for you. Applying everything discussed here starts small, but requires consistency. Question before accepting. Focus before reacting. Visualize before acting. Transform knowledge into a practical tool, not intellectual entertainment. Every conscious choice strengthens your virtue. Every decision made with clarity, realigned with reality, reduces your vulnerability to manipulation. Machiavelli never spoke of comfort. He spoke of power, autonomy, and survival in a world that is not just, but is predictable for those who see the patterns. So I leave you with some uncomfortable questions, worth more than any ready-made answer. Would you rather continue believing that you weren't born for this, or take the risk of discovering what you are truly capable of? Do you want to live reacting to the world, or finally operate above it? If something inside you has realized that this way of thinking changes everything, then this is the moment to act. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and continue this process. Here the idea is not to entertain, it's to train your mind to a level that few achieve.